Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tiger podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Detroit Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. After a 2-4 week that started out in a promising way, Tigers played 6 games this week, Ev. Had a chance to win all 6, only won 2. A few cracks in the bullpen to be expected in a 162-game, 26-week season. What'd you see? What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought 2-1 against the St. Louis Cardinals was pretty good. And then 0-3 against the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium. That was a little bit of a bummer. The Tigers definitely had a chance to win. If not all 3 of those games, at least 2 of those games. You know, there were, like you mentioned, some issues with the bullpen in that one. And that's a really good New York Yankee team, let me tell you. And I thought the starting pitching was pretty solid all the way through for the Tigers. But again, like, you have a couple slips in the bullpen, and that's what can happen when you face a really good team. And also, that's what happens when you face good pitching on the other side. The Tigers didn't do a good job of providing run support and, you know, being in a position to be able to win some of those games from an offensive standpoint. So that was a little bit disappointing. I thought really good performance from Jack Flaherty in game 1 of Tuesday's doubleheader against the Cardinals. That was the one game against the Cardinals the Tigers didn't win, but Jack Flaherty was absolutely electric, career high 14 strikeouts. That was one of those outings where it was like, okay, that's who Jack Flaherty can be when everything is put together. That's why the Tigers went out and signed this guy to a 1-year, $14 million contract. The stuff was completely nasty. It was led by the fastball. He was pumping 95 plus in the first inning. And, you know, don't forget, he used to pitch for the Cardinals and he came up with the St. Louis Cardinals. He was a Cardinal through and through until last year's trade deadline. And so he was pretty amped up coming into that game. I'm going to be very interested to see if he's going to be able to replicate that again in his next time out. But that was just an outstanding performance from Jack Flaherty. He deserves a hat tip for that. That's performance of the week for me. But yeah, 2-4 record this week, and the Tigers find themselves in an interesting spot going to Cleveland to play against the Cleveland Guardians. Tigers have an 18-16 record. That's 4th place in the American League Central, trailing the 22-12 Cleveland Guardians, 19-14 Minnesota Twins, and 20-15 Kansas City Royals. Shout out to the Tigers for a winning month in April, but it's been a rough start so far in May. The Twins, meanwhile, they won 12 games in a row before that streak was snapped with Sunday's loss. The Tigers are about to go play 3 games against Cleveland. So this is going to be a really good test to see, 1, where is this team at? And 2, is there an opportunity to make up some ground in the division after 3 losses in a row coming out of New York?
Want to be a big boy, you got to play big boy baseball. So they're in games. Now they got to start winning some of these games, and that's going to require 2 things. It's going to require more hitting, for sure. And I don't really care how they figure out how to do that. They just have to figure out how to do it, period. We're going to get to that in a second. But it's hard to be mad at the bullpen because when every single outing you have is leverage, it's hard to be successful every single time out. It starts wearing on you. I mean, today's game, the Yankees executed, the Tigers did not when it was winning time. I mean, yes, the rain was a problem. Yes, the field conditions were a problem. Yes, it was a joke that they even played the game.
But that goes for both teams, Mark.
No doubt about it. There's no excuses about today. They got beat. The Yankees did what was required to win. And the most interesting thing, and I think I tweeted it, was nobody really thought the Yankees were going to have a very good bullpen, but holy smokes, their bullpen was really good all weekend. Really, really good. I mean, some guys that got flushed from other teams. I mean, Victor Gonzalez, Luke Weaver, they were having a fire sale on. He looked like the best reliever in baseball. So bottom line is Tigers got to play better if they want to win more. You know, not every team's going to be bad. And I like the fight in the Tigers. I just think they need to start raising their quality of their game. All right, we're going to get into the big 2. We got a huge show for people today. Why don't you tell them who's on the show today?
Yeah, we got a lot going on. Ryan Garko, the Tigers Vice President of Player Development, he's going to be on with us. We're going to have an interview that I had with Max Clark back when the Tigers were playing against Tampa Bay Rays. I went over to Tampa where Low A Lakeland was playing their games, and I talked to Max Clark for a while, so we're going to cut to some of that. But yeah, we got to dig into the big 2 right now because we got a pretty hefty show here.
All right. So let's dig in to the big two. First question of the big two is a lot of fun, which is how good is Riley Greene right now? And how bad is Spencer Torkelson right now? So let's discuss it.
I think that's big two, question 1 and 2 combined, just because we're short on time. But how good has Riley Greene been? Well, 9th in baseball with a 170 WRC plus. It's Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Alec Bohm, Jurickson Profar, Tyler O'Neill, Juan Soto, Jose Altuve, Salvador Perez, and then Riley Greene. He's tied for 10th in baseball at 1.7 F-WAR. Mookie Betts, Juan Soto, Gunnar Henderson, Alec Bohm, Shohei Ohtani, Bobby Witt Jr., Stephen Kwan, Jose Altuve, L.A. De La Cruz, Salvador Perez, and then Riley Greene. He's also second in baseball with a 16.9% walk rate, only behind Bryce Harper, ahead of names like Mookie Betts and Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, Kyle Tucker, Freddie Freeman. Top 10 in isolated power and on-base plus slugging percentage, top 15 in on-base percentage and slugging percentage. Look, Riley Greene has been on an absolute tear. He's on fire right now, and it's so much fun to watch. And it doesn't just feel like, okay, this is going to be Riley Greene for a week and then some bad at-bats. It feels like we're starting to see this now going on 2 weeks where Riley Greene is looking pretty good. He's absolutely demolishing fastballs because he's on time for fastballs. His swing rate has dropped significantly from 46.8% in 2023 to 38.8% in 2024. And as a result, he isn't chasing as many pitches outside of the strike zone. So he's continuing to make the same amount of contact when he swings at pitches inside the zone, comparing last season to this season. But basically, he's just not swinging at many pitches outside the strike zone. So he's either A, taking walks, or B, doing damage on pitches in the zone. He's being more selective, and it's really paying off. And on top of that, Riley Greene always talks about wanting to get the ball in the air more. Well, his ground ball rate, it's dropped from 49% in 2023 to 43% in 2024. His fly ball rate, it's jumped from 22% in 2023 to 27% in 2024. That's why he already has 8 home runs in 34 games, on pace for 38 home runs this season if he plays 162 games. Last year, Mark, he had 11 homers in 99 games. That was a 162-game average of just 18 home runs. Riley Greene is on pace for almost 40 homers. So look, we're watching this guy become an elite hitter as a complete hitter. It's happening. Enjoy it, people. Tell your friends, tell your coworkers, make sure your kids are watching this stuff. Riley Greene is going to be an all-star. He might even get MVP votes. Heck, he has a chance to win the damn thing if he keeps doing this. Riley Greene's playing good ball, and to Scott Harris, do whatever you can to lock this guy up to a long-term contract extension. As long as you believe he can stay healthy into the future and isn't Grady Sizemore 2.0, this is a blast right now. This is the Riley Greene that everyone has hoped for, and he's finally coming into form.
Well, let's add a couple of things that we didn't discuss, which is Baseball Reference. He's 2.3 WAR, which is second among all position players in baseball. He has an 18% barrel rate, which is in the top 3% in baseball, 18.3%. And, bottom line, he's just absolutely killing mistakes, killing baseballs, and, never seems to get anything when it's unimportant. It's all when it is important. So I'm going to bask in it. This started April 26th of 2023 and went on until he got injured the first time. And he just about started his ascent in 2024 about the same time.
But this is what's frustrating, though, Mark, is because you do look at, and again, this is the second part of the big two, right? Like, this is question 2, is it's the Spencer Torkelson component of all of this, is when these two guys were coming up, it was, okay, these are going to be the new Bash Bros. These are the guys coming up, right? It was like Mize, Manning, Skubal, and then it was Spencer Torkelson, Riley Greene. Now it's Kevin McGonigal and Max Clark. But these are the two guys that were supposed to come up and anchor this thing together, and Spencer Torkelson hasn't done it. Okay, he hasn't been that guy yet. Riley Greene has been that guy, and Riley Greene is continuing to grow into that guy. Spencer Torkelson has been pretty frustrating. Now, I know Cole Keith is actually the worst hitter in baseball with a 16 WRC+, which ranks 175th among 175 qualified hitters. Parker Meadows doesn't qualify, but he's not too far behind. But the point is, Spencer Torkelson ranks 158th among 175 hitters with a 62 WRC plus. He also ranks pretty low with his minus 0.6 F4. It's bad offense combined with bad defense. I combined Spencer Torkelson's spring training numbers and his regular season numbers. It's a 193 batting average with 0 home runs, 16 walks, and 52 strikeouts in 51 games, a span of 196 trips to the plate across spring training and the regular season. The quality of contact, it's not 1-1 quality. The approach, it's not 1-1 quality, right? This is a guy who was number 1 overall pick in 2020, and he's supposed to be the real deal, and he's supposed to mash. He's late on fastballs, and he's early on off speed because he's getting caught in the middle. We're seeing him looking like a statue up there at times with all of his first pitch takes. It's a 25% swing rate on the first pitch. It was 29% last season. So he's not as aggressive early in counts. It's causing him to get burned with some first pitch strikes that basically puts him down 0-1 in the count right off the bat, which has been a problem, right? And then the timing is an issue. He hasn't been on time for fastballs, which reminds me a lot of the 2022 season. Now, he was on time for fastballs in 2023, and look what happened. He hit the ball hard all season long, and he ended up turning it on and hitting 31 home runs. Now, Torkelson can hit 30 home runs again, and he can do it this season, but he needs to get on time for the fastball, and the fact that it hasn't happened yet, despite nearly 200 plate appearances since the beginning of spring training, is extremely concerning because, Mark, this isn't year 1. This isn't his rookie season. This is year 3 coming off 30-plus bombs, and the Tigers are trying to win games. He needs to get on time for fastballs. And until that happens, it's not going to get any better. Another issue, too, is like his swing, and maybe it's that groove swing that he has. It can't seem to make contact with those down and away sliders that are painted on the corner. So he needs an inside fastball to do anything productive. And right now, when he gets those, he's not on time. It's worrisome, but if you can figure out the timing on fastballs, anything can happen. It's just, man, you just wonder like what this could be like if it was both Riley Greene and Spencer Torkelson clicking at the same time. That just hasn't been the case.
Also does not help that Kerry Bounce Carpenter is about 3 for his last 29. It's, when you have your big 3 and 2 your big 3 can't really make much productive contact, it's a problem. I'm getting kind of tired of talking about Spencer Torkelson. He's got 2 barrels for the year. He's got a barrel per plate appearance rate that ranks number 247 in baseball, 246, I'm sorry. But, it's not a prescription for winning. That's what I'm going to tell you. And, I'm not even going to get into the idea that he's, arguably the worst fielding first baseman in baseball to go along with it. So I'm glad he's walking. I'm glad he hit 2 doubles today. One was a big one. Hats off. Maybe it's the start of something. I do want to address something you and I have talked about, which is AJ Hinch did express some frustration, which is highly unusual for AJ Hinch to actually sort of call a player out in the press. And for those of you that are unaware what was said, he was asked about Torkelson yesterday in New York. He basically said, I've moved him down the lineup. The next thing I guess I can do is sit him down next to me. And as somebody that talks to AJ Hinch almost every day, give me your 2 cents about that.
I mean, when it comes to what AJ Hinch said, I don't really take that as a, look, it's AJ Hinch is going to be honest, okay? That's the first thing that, we have to understand here is that AJ Hinch, he doesn't bullshit his players. And I don't think this was him calling Torkelson out in a way. I think this was just him being completely honest. I think I can look with my eyes and I can tell you that that's probably the case, right? Spencer Torkelson gets moved down to the 7 hole for the first time since 2022, and you can't get much lower than that, especially with some of the other hitters that are in this lineup. So if that's the case, yes, next step is sitting on the bench, Mark Canha playing more. And after that, if, in limited opportunities, Torkelson still struggles, well, then you maybe talk about the AAA Toledo conversation. I don't think that's been a conversation yet, but at the same time, I think that it's pretty close to happening. And I think that was maybe a little bit of a sign that is the case. So again, AJ Hinch isn't saying anything to reporters that he's not saying to Spencer Torkelson. I'll tell you that much. There's no doubt about that.
He's saying it to him first.
100%, 1000%. But again, I think this is also AJ Hinch affirming that, yes, what his eyes are telling him is exactly what our eyes are telling us. And he's not feeding, he's not feeding fans the baloney of oh yeah, the process is really good. Everything is great. Don't worry. He's going to turn it on. It's going to be okay. AJ Hinch isn't that kind of guy. Like, he's not going to bullshit you. And I really respect that about him. And I think that's exactly what he was doing there. He was calling it like he sees it.
To me, best manager in baseball. So I will promise you, we got Ryan Garko coming up next. And I want everyone to know we're going to discuss how difficult it is to make the transition from AAA to the major leagues. So all our loyal Days of Roar listeners and amateur GMs who think it's a piece of cake to bring a guy up from the minor leagues, plug him in and have him do better than what's being done up here. Poor news for you, which is not really. And if you want to say try it, well, the Tigers are 18-16. They're off to a pretty decent start, and it's not a tryout camp anymore. So you can forget about all that. And when the day comes when AJ Hinch feels like Parker Meadows, Colt Keith, and especially Spencer Torkelson are not better than the alternatives, you'll be the first to know because, people will be being recalled from the minor leagues and these guys are going to get sent down. Don't expect it to happen too soon, though. All right. We're going to go to speak with Ryan Garko. We'll be back on the other side. I'm excited to do this, and we'll be back in a minute.
All right. I'd like to welcome Ryan Garko, Detroit Tigers Vice President of Player Development, to the Days of Roar podcast. The Tigers hired Ryan in September 2021 to lead the player development department, and a lot of good things have happened in this organization since then. I don't think that's a coincidence either. We talk about Riley Greene as the straw that stirs the drink with the Tigers on the field, but how about Ryan Garko and his PD department as the straw that stirs the drink throughout the organization? The Tigers are developing players better than ever before, so let's give credit to Ryan and his team for that. Now, before joining the Tigers, Ryan worked for the Los Angeles Angels, Los Angeles Dodgers, and coached at Stanford. He also played college baseball at Stanford, winning the Johnny Bench Award as a top catcher in college before embarking on a 6-year MLB career, playing more than 450 games. He's done so many things in baseball, all before the age of 45, and throughout the past few years, he has been making a huge impact on the Tigers. We're thankful to have Ryan on the Days of Roar podcast for the first time. Ryan, I know that was a long introduction, but thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to talk. Appreciate the introduction, and I'll probably say this a lot today. We lucky to have a lot of really good people in this department working really hard, and it's been a fun 2.5 through third season into it. Just trying to get players better every day.
For sure. Obviously, the guy that we got to ask you about, Jackson Jobe, somebody that fans are already looking at as a potential option for the Tigers in 2024, maybe later on in the season. He just went down with a left hamstring strain. I'm not sure how much you can say about that, but can you walk us through for him, maybe where he's at in the recovery process, his development last year, what the development plan is like this year, especially coming off the back injury that he had that limited him to less than 80 innings last season? Like, where does he go from here? How have you guys tried to build him up and take care of the body?
Yeah, it's been fun watching Jackson grow from a young, pretty raw, young, not very filled out high school draft pick with tons of potential into I think a young man that's going to have a really big impact in Detroit really soon. He's filled out. I mean, the amazing thing, I think it was last year in the fall league. I'm kind of just used to Jackson being a high school kid and standing next to him and feeling bigger than him. And this spring training, I stood next to him. I feel like he's grown a couple more inches and his shoulders are broader than mine. And I'm looking up at him now and it's like, whoa, like this isn't a kid anymore. This is a young man. So in terms of the body, he's filled out. He's really strong. He's so athletic. One of the things I think Jackson shapes, and he's so coachable because he's so athletic. He was a high school shortstop. I think a lot of times, we joke around how unathletic a lot of pitchers are. He's the opposite, like an incredible athlete and able to make quick adjustments. The hamstring strain, we're digging in on sort of the why behind it. He's down in Lakeland now where we have the most resources. We have a pool where he can get in. He got in the pool already and started the rehab. We anticipate, a pretty normal recovery. It's something he'll have to work diligently to get through. But I think the most important thing is we just want to make sure the hamstring is 100%. So that he doesn't change his throw at all when he does come back. And we, sometimes a pitcher, if they have those lower half injuries, they can change their throw a bit. We'll get through it. And we trust our rehab group to take care of Jackson, get him back on the field at 100%. I think in terms of the stuff, we all saw it this spring training. it was a massive jump. I think you had guys like, Skubal and Mize and Manning watching him, and it is different. I mean, we've all been around, even for someone like Skubal's different too, and Jackson, it's the command, it's the shapes, it's the velocity, it's the arm action and just the arm speed on the pitches. I think the slider gets a lot of attention, but the changeup and the cutter have become really, really strong secondary pitches. So it's a true 4-pitch starter arsenal, and the changeup really, I think, is going to give him weapons against left-handed hitters that will keep him pretty platoon neutral. So I mean, there's still work to do. Like I thought he was kind of coming around in Double-A. The last 7 innings were really good. We were hopeful that Double-A hitters would sort of help make him bear down. He wants it right now, and he's going to get there quickly. And he was starting to dominate Double-A hitters, so we'll get him back healthy, get him back there to Erie, and just let him keep pitching. I thought him going to the fall league and finishing here at 80 innings was important. We want to try to get him to 100 this year at least, and I think we can still do that even with this setback.
For sure. Well, it's really good to know that he's going to be on the road to recovery, and it seems like the hamstring strain is something mild and he'll be able to bounce back from it. I want to ask about other players, but first we got to just jump into some developmental things that we're generally curious about. Like when you come in, you take over and you're, walking in the door September 2021, what developmental philosophies are you bringing with you that, you've allowed to kind of play out or that you've implemented, over your time with the Tigers?
Yeah, you look back on it now. I think one of the blessings that we had coming in, there was a decision that Al Avila at the time made, was to wipe the slate pretty clean. And I'm very staff focused. I think our scouts and Scott and Jeff, they handle the acquisitions, right? Like our motto is like, send us anybody. Like let's just get them better. Like let's just let's make players better. That's our job. Like pretty simple. So our thought, though, on the staff is as players, do come and go, and as we develop them and hopefully launch them to the big leagues or we use them in a trade and they can help us out in some type of trade or anything, just creating value with players, finding staff that I think two things. Number one, super forward thinking. We're going to leave no stone unturned. We want to be on the cutting edge of whatever is going on in the industry today. And number two, just a tireless work ethic of either researching what's next for our group or pouring ourselves into players. Just the care level, the attention to detail, staff development. I mean, we spend just as much time developing our coaches as we do our players at times. And I'm pretty blessed to have a really good staff around us that I think, look, like, we talked about Jackson already, but then I think you look at someone like Lyle Lockhart, who we've got in a pretty small trade for with the Dodgers. Like we pour just as much energy and effort into a guy like Lyle as we do Jackson, and we take a lot of pride in that. The other thing was probably two other things. Like second thing is just individualized player plans. We talk all the time about like every player that gets drafted that makes it to pro ball is really good at something. Like our scouts, like they don't get this to this point of their career without being really good. Like, let's lean into what makes them really good. And then around the edges, like in the margins, find like how do we like round out the player as best we can, and how do we do it individualized? So that kind of blends into the third thing that we're still trying, like we're still pouring resources into it, is the performance, what we call like the performance side of things, which is medical, strength and conditioning, nutrition, mental skills, mental performance, blending those, rest and recovery, sleep, like those. That sort of nebulous like performance area where every place I've been, I think that is the area amongst the other 29 teams where we can be elite. And I also think like players feel that, and like making sure players, they feel taken care of here when they see players from other clubs, like they tell them like, hey, they're taking care of us. Like we stay in nice hotels, we eat well, we have 2 trainers at every level. We're going to start having multiple strength coaches at every level. Like our mental performance group is always checking up on us. The players feel that. I mean, the baseball is going to happen every day. We have to play every night at 7:00. How we prepare those guys and then how they recover and get ready for the next game. Like we have a ton of influence over that. And I think that is an area we're going to keep working on and where we have gained a lot of ground.
So the performance side is what you probably can control. I mean, obviously, some other thing, I'm curious about the process of building a system. I have something I call process and profile. Process is how you guys get better, and profile is, are there types of players or types of skills that the Tigers emphasize more than others. So, I mean, it's in other sports, this happens all the time. It's like if a guy was a particularly good shooter in hoop, or maybe he runs well, doesn't run routes great as a receiver in the NFL. When you guys are looking for players, whether it's, in the draft or even players are, you're playing 4 different leagues, 5 really, every night. So I'm sure you're watching other teams' players simultaneous to watching your own. Tell me a little bit about the process and the profile of being a Tiger minor leaguer and how you look to acquire players.
For sure. I think, look, Scott Harris said it the day he was hired at his press conference. The dominate the strike zone mantra is it's real. Like it's real at every level. It's real every night. It's in every meeting we have, like every pregame meeting and every postgame review meeting we have with a hitter or a pitcher. The strike zone is still front and center. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And I agree with it, like wholeheartedly. Like when Scott talks about it, everything good or bad on a macro sense happens around the strike zone. If so, like our floor for a hitter, right, is are they, if you don't swing at strikes, it doesn't matter how much power you have. It doesn't matter how much bat speed you have. It doesn't even matter how good your contact ability is. Like swinging at strikes is a foundational part of our offensive approach. So we talk about it in a lot of our review sessions and our player plans, like the pitches you swing at, which we also feel like I truly believe like the hitter has complete control over that, right? So like I get to pick the pitch I swing. As good as pitching is now, as much stuff as guys have, and every throw is like all power all the time, like I still get to pick if I swing or not. So that is still foundationally what we talk about with our hitters most of the time. Now, like we definitely have hitters in our system that have a lot of power and a little bit of swing and miss. And we still, look, those guys can still be very, very valuable players. We're going to lean into what, like I just said, into what the hitter does really well. Jose De La Cruz is a hitter in Lakeland. He has more power than maybe anybody on our major league team. Like we just got to get him to make better decisions swinging strikes. And if Jose can just swing at more strikes and make more contact without losing the power, like that starts to become like a super interesting player, right? It's like those are the kind of conversations. And we have guys who put everything in play. They make decisions. They just don't have any power. That's Wenceel Perez, right? Wenzel's goal 3 years ago in High A, West Michigan, was Kenny Graham. Just really, some of it was a swing change, some of it was an approach change, some of it was just a mindset of like, Wenceel, you're never going to leave West Michigan unless you can hit the ball harder. And just then it just becomes like coaches doing what they love to do and a player buying in. And he just kept getting better and better and carried it all the way through AAA. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the conversations we get to have every day. Pitching side, it's the same thing. Shapes and strikes is kind of the mantra. And then velocity is sort of like the third piece of that key. But again, like if you can't throw strikes, it's hard to move up through our system. We like to strike people out, but just as much we like not walking people and giving up free bases. And then, one thing that we do talk about shapes. I think we have a pretty good idea of what shapes play in the major leagues. And then we can look at the shapes a pitcher is creating and sort of envision what that arsenal might look like as they move up to the higher levels. And Toledo with ABS now and how good the hitters are and the small strike zone, like gives us a really good look at how a pitcher's stuff is going to play in the big leagues when we know hitters are going to bring them in the box and not chase.
I wanted to go back to something you were discussing about Wenceel Perez, and I think it lends itself to some things we wanted to talk to you about. The Tigers have some players in their system in a similar career arc that, Perez was, which is stuck at lower levels, maybe more skill over production right now. And I think sometimes people don't truly appreciate the game is so difficult, but translating those skills into production on the field, I'll throw out a couple names early about that. You brought up De La Cruz being one. A lot of skills, hit and miss on the production because he's still learning how to hit strikes. But now let's throw in Campos and Santana going through a similar learning experience. Skills are there, especially Santana obviously knows how to walk, right? And can hit the ball pretty hard. Struggling to make consistent contact. Sometimes guys get it quickly. Sometimes guys take years. But talk a little bit about those two guys to add into the Dela Cruz stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. A little different. Campos they're both young for their league, right? So we've been pretty aggressive with both of them. Campos, I think it really comes down to whether it's a contact point and these are just like, this is what we do every day, right? We talk about this all the time. He hits the ball on the ground too much, right? He hits the ball really hard, but he hits the ball on the ground a lot. He does make pretty good decisions and he does hit the ball hard. He just is, and like that's Justice Bigby 2-3 years ago, right? Just is very similar, just a lot of ground balls, but like really interesting. Like, hey, this guy, he's doing everything we like except for hitting the ball on the ground too much, and that's Roberto's still his challenge. Now, is it a swing change? Is it an approach change? Like, this is why the minor leagues exist, right? Our hitting coaches and him and our coordinators, like we talk all the time about, do we just try to set the contact point out in front more? And some nights he does that. And that's when we see him driving balls gap to gap. Is it something with his stance? Is it something with his setup? Like, we have all kinds of tools that we can use to gauge like how we get him on plane and through the ball. And we try to be pretty objective. The one thing I really like about our hitting group is we can all watch video and start, thinking about, hey, like, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? Sort of the more traditional hitting program that probably I played in, but Kenny Graham and his group, we have Hawkeye now at every stadium, which is a pretty big investment from our ownership, that we can objectively see what really is happening with the player's load and with the bat, and it'll track the bat. And so with Roberto, we just talk, it's like, it's get on plane, stay on plane, get the ball in the air. Santana, it's pretty incredible. It is like great decisions. Like you said, like the walks and just the swing decisions are great. And he does have power when he makes contact. He hits the ball hard and he pulls the ball in the air, which is kind of the opposite of Campos. Like, Santana knows how to pull the ball in the air, which is hard to do. It's hard to do for young players. He's still young for the league. There's just some swing and miss. And I do think with Santana, it's a swing thing. It's a setup. It's the load. It's where the hands start and the bat's not, the bat gets in and out of the zone pretty quickly. And we have really good people working with him all the time on getting a move that gets his bat in the zone and keeps it there. He can at times just come across it a little bit. And as we work, and as another young player, like, and so he's right where I think he needs to be. I wouldn't have changed anything that we've done with him, because he clearly mastered, the FCL, and the walks would have been, too high. So he's right where he needs to be. We've just got to find a swing that he can repeat, like find a repeatable swing that makes more contact. And he knows that. And he shows it. I think with both those guys, the exciting part is series by series, we look at it, last 7, last 14, last 30, when they start having these stretches that we're doing everything we ask, where they just starts becoming like, how do we do this over, 100 at bats and not 15 or 20?
One thing that we talk about on this podcast all the time is, not what you can do sometimes, but what can you do all the time? And maybe not all the time, but most of the time, right? How do you take skills or things that a player can do sometimes and turn them into a consistency type of thing? And do you have any examples of that from your time with the Tigers, where you've taken a player who, has some good skill sets, is able to do it sometimes, but then you really want to try to get him to do it most of the time, if not all the time?
Yeah, I think, the Bigby's probably a good example of that, of a guy that it was a ground ball monster. And Kenny Graham should get all the credit. Like, he kept on talking about like all the underlying metrics. We kind of call those like the granular metrics are really good, but the end result is not what we're not getting what we're getting. Or, we talk about process versus outcomes a lot. And I think, Evan, what you're saying, is like the process is really good, but we're not seeing the outcome that we're hoping for. And we do, that's kind of how probably the most similar thing we do to phrase it like that. And so with Bigby, it just became, it's right. The coaches and staff, we have control before the game, and then we have control after the game. And the players, we just let them go play when the first pitch is thrown. So it was a lot of drill packages. We just try to create environments, Bigby or any of our hitters or pitchers. We Max Gordon's with us and came from Driveline, right? It's so much of it there is about creating environments where the player just makes the adjustment on his own. And so we try to practice as aggressively as possible before the games. Like the theory, I mean, it's not unique to us, but practice really, really hard, practice harder than game speed, and in environments like faster and more difficult than the game, hoping that it makes the game a little bit easier so that could be, different machine work or different, just, angle machines or weighted balls or different kind of bats, like forcing Big B to like catch the ball out in front. And then on the backside, we just have our post-game review, which was pretty much every night showing Big B like, hey, like, here's where you made contact tonight. Like, here was the result. And we can track that now. It's really cool. Some of the tools we have, like we have off, a home plate graph and then exactly where he made contact with the ball. And we get a zone like 6 to 12 inches out in front of the plate where we wanted contact. And our hitting coaches would review it with him every night and then just do it again the next day until he could feel without a coach's help, like where his contact point needed to be.
How do you know when changes in progress in a player is real? Whether that's a swing decision, whether it's approach, whether it's mechanical, when do you know when something is actually real?
We have a lot of times we just lean on, our analytics group. I mean, we know there are points where certain statistics or certain performance metrics stabilize. And so, something like WRC plus takes a lot of at bats to probably about 300 plate appearances to really start getting excited about. But there's other things like exit velocity, launch angle, exit velocity. Like there's things that usually hold once the player starts showing that at much faster clips. So we have stabilization rates for all of our metrics, and they kind of, then we once we start getting, you try not to get too high or too low about a player. We have calls every week with our pitching and hitting group, and we do talk a lot about trends, both like long and short term trends, but then always stay grounded in the stabilization rates of like where these stats become real. And we have, I'm a former player, former coach. I'm probably more traditional, and I always have like really good people around me. Pete Bransfield's our assistant director. Pete always draws us back to the math and the objective, numbers, what they really are tell us. So I think we have a really good balance of traditional, coaches and analysts in our group and we just try to, you talk about like when do you move a guy, or when do you send a guy down, or when do you change playing time? Like when we do really make those decisions, we take a lot of time and look at it from every angle.
I mean, you want to induce some failure in a player once they're mastering a level. So I would assume that goes into some of your decision making about when to promote them, because that's the next part of their growth level, right?
For sure. I mean, we talk a lot, dominate your league is a saying. We, when a player asks me like, why am I not moving? Like, and we have some metrics that pretty easily show a player like, hey, you're dominating your league or not. And I think most of our guys know them. And then kind of like we said with Jackson at the beginning, like the opponent will tell us a lot of times, like what if a player is in the right league, especially for our pitching, and then our big metric, one we really care about, is in zone miss. We get some of the chase, right? Like some young hitters chase. So we really, like we said, we want our pitchers to really be in zone, and we have a lot of markers, like in zone miss being one of them. Usually projects success at the next level. The peripheral stats again, like they really start telling us, again, like BABIP and exit velocity, like things can be a little deceiving in small samples, and sometimes we have to make decisions pretty quick, and then we just try to hit it from all angles and make sure that the player is dominating the league before we move them.
All right, we're going to do an express round on a few player names. So before we do that, I want to ask you a question. Look, for people that aren't familiar with Ryan Garko's career, he was a catcher at Stanford, and I think when you went into pro ball, you were a catcher too for a while, right?
Yeah, I caught all the way to AAA. I moved. Right. I moved in the big leagues. Yeah, for Victor Martinez signed a long deal, and I had to find a new spot. So, but
we do know that catchers are the Mensa members of baseball, right? I mean, catchers are the smart guys in baseball. I mean, look at AJ. Look at you. So I'm just curious, because catchers have a unique perspective about a lot of things about the game, especially if you call pitches back there. There's a whole chess part and thinking part of baseball that catchers do that a lot of other players don't do nearly as much as a daily part of their skill set and job. And I'm curious, listening to AJ talk about this, I'm curious how much impact being a catcher has on your philosophy of scouting your own players, developing player development things. I mean, catching gives you a lot of insight into a lot of things about baseball. I'm curious how it impacted your player development thought.
You always talk about how many catchers, current managers, are former catchers, right? And I think AJ and I talk about this. Is it the chicken and egg theory? Is it we all got stuck behind the plate because we showed at an early age that we we had a little bit better grasp of the game, or is it catching all those years helped us, become better, strategy, and kind of you're looking out and like seeing the whole field. I think it's a little bit of both, and I do think the one thing that I've really that I enjoy, and I think I like to be able to do is all the catching. Those of us that are catching is like I think we can relate to pitchers, pitching coaches, pitching strategists, and just as easily as the hitting guys, and talk about offense and talk to that side of things. So I think one of the things that like so many managers so well in terms of game strategy or managing a bullpen, just talking to pitchers. Like pitchers are, we have some of our outfielders, like they don't even want to talk to the pitchers just because the less you can interact with some of those guys, the better. So I think to be a catcher, you have to be a good communicator. Like you have to be able to handle a staff. You have to be able to work with your advanced group and probably in some manner your front office. I mean, all I did with the Angels was our advance, and I was bringing all the information down from the office to the players and the catchers. It was Max Stassi and Kurt Suzuki were the best combo I have, and like those guys are both going to be in the game forever. Kurt's retired and working in the Angels front office, and it does seem natural. Like we talk all the time, just catchers in our system. Oh, like this guy will be a great coach, or this guy will be a great scout, and I think it's just all the interactions you have to have, the position forces you to have that help round out your ability to stay in the game when you're done.
Okay, now I'm curious because you just went into talking about yourself a little bit, and I know Mark asked the question, but I'm really curious as well. Like, did you always want to do player development stuff? Like, did you always want to run a department like this? Because you've played, you've coached, you've managed in the minor leagues. Now you're leading a player development department. Were you drawn to that as opposed to staying in the dugout as a coach or a manager? Or you maybe like the idea of juggling both, or maybe being able to have one foot in each avenue moving forward? Like, where did this kind of come from for you?
I think I have a real passion for player development. I do really like, I'll say, I guess all I'll say is in 2016, when I went to go work for the Dodgers, I think they were going through a very similar transition to what we did in Detroit in 2021, and that Gabe Kapler was hired. It was probably like a pretty old school group, in LA, and Gabe got to clean the slate and bring in a lot of new coaches. And I was fortunate to be one of them. And I watched that system transition into, it was fun. It was a fun group of guys. Like Chris Fetter was there and Brandon Gomes. And I mean, there's a lot of coaches that have spread out. George Lombard was there. I mean, there were so many guys that have spread out and done other things. And then, I got a chance to be a head coach in college and go to Joe Madden's staff. And I think that this opportunity was so unique that when it came up, it was, hey, like, we know we need to make some changes. You're going to get to hire people, like be pretty aggressive and be pretty creative in how you build out a system. And we're going to give you the resources that you want to do it. I think the uniqueness of this opportunity and it kind of came out of nowhere. I think when Al called, I certainly wasn't expecting it. And the more I started looking at the opportunity, and even Chris Ilitch's, wanting to develop from within and how to really have a sustainable team, like all of that, it just lined up. I think my time with the Dodgers, I had always had in the back of my mind, hey, if I ever get a chance to lead a department like that, where we have the freedom to be pretty aggressive and creative and bring people in from, we have former high school coaches, we have guys that have coached in a facility that have never put on a uniform in their life that are coaching in the upper levels and doing a great job. Like we got to go out and hire and develop and promote some like really, really interesting and I think like super high ceiling staff. And that's what, so I just saw a lot of parallels to what we did in LA, and that was a lot of fun. And we're trying to do the same thing here.
With that being said, how has the player development department with the Tigers evolved since you joined in 2021? And then even then, like, how has it been enhanced since the Tigers hired Scott Harris as president of baseball operations, back in 2022?
Yeah. I think a lot of it just goes to, Scott's brought a whole new layer of ideas and challenges for us. Scott's one of the most, for me being a former player and, him being coming through as an executive, he's one of the most player-centric executives I've ever been around. And the player experience in Detroit, and then anybody that puts on a Tiger uniform, he's really emphasizes the player experience. And so we've really doubled down on, when I talked about the individualization of player plans and of how we treat players. We want when our players have bragged to the other 29 teams, whether they're in, low A or triple A, or obviously in Detroit, that the Tigers are pumping all the resources available into them. So some of that's just been technology. I mean, food, things that are, infrastructure has been built out where if a player, feels like they need something, they're able to get in the tech cage in Lakeland, and we're on it right now. And we have specialists that came from a facility like Tread or in-house, a guy like Jeff Branson, who's been a major league coach, is now working in our hitting department. That we have experts on scene, on site in Lakeland to address things now. I think those types of things where players can't recreate the major league experience like 1-to-1 in the minor leagues just because we have too many players, not enough staff, but we're trying to be pretty close. And Scott's given us all the support and resources we need to try to do that.
All right. We're going to play a little bonus round on players, because anybody listening to this podcast is probably already yelling and screaming at us that they want to hear about a few players. So let's jump straight into it. First two right off the jump. Let's talk about Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal, and then we'll get to Jace Young.
Okay. Yeah, Max, he didn't get his first 10 at bats, and he was calling me, and he's like, "I'm going to get it going." I was like, "Max, you got about 700 more, buddy. We're not worried." But really like what he's doing. I was just in Florida, so I feel like I look pretty red on this camera, but his offense, obviously we're all paying attention every day. His speed on the bases and his outfield defense is incredible to see in person. So I'm so excited. I think Tigers fans for a long time watching him play outfield in Comerica Park is going to be a joy for anybody, because he gets to the ball as fast as anyone I've ever seen play, and he's only 19 years old. Threw some guys out, like the arm is real. Like when we say 5 tools, like it really is 5 tools, because the defense, the speed, the arm, like those are kind of hard to create. Like you're just kind of born with those. Like he has them. Love where the swing is at. I love his approach. I love his maturity. I think we don't even talk to him about power because we don't want him to start trying to create it artificially. It's going to be there though. He'd be a freshman in college right now somewhere. So I hardly think anybody would be that worried about a freshman's exit velos and things. And so we have time that's going to come. I love, like I said, he's made some subtle changes to his hand setup. He's just learning. Like the makeup is off the charts with Max. He's coachable. He's humble. He's hungry. So it's been a good start. Kevin McGonigal, after coming off the hamstring injury in spring training, he can hit. I mean, you're going to hear this over and over and over. He's really, he has a hitter's mindset. He's in the box, like looking to hit the ball hard as soon as they throw it over the plate. Defensively, like we're going all up the middle. So second and short. There's some other young shortstops there that we want to get some time there. We're going to play him at short for as long as we can. He looks really good there. I mean, amongst guys his age, he looks just fine at shortstop. We know he can play some second base as well, so we're going to play both. But Kevin, he gets in the box, like he looks like a hitter. I know it's like kind of an old school scout saying, like if I was writing up a report, it's just like hitterish, man. He looks like a hitter and gets his ace swing off more often than not. And it's been fun to watch. Now that Kevin's there, those guys have a great relationship, and watching them at that top of that lineup is a lot of fun.
Talk about Braceno, because if we're going to talk about the 1-hitter and the 2-hitter, we might as well talk about the sweetest swinging 3-hitter. So
yeah, he's, again, I think I'll start with defense again. I mean, I spent my time when I'm with the younger players, I will actually go down and do a little more baseball sort of skill work than I would at the upper levels. But I talked to him about catching. I mean, I was sort of that fringy, like, could I catch, could I not player all along, and told him, I mean, he knows, like, he wants to be a catcher. We want him to be a catcher. The bat is really special. We don't think he's ever going to lose that. And then, we talked a little about being a catcher. I told, we just talked to him, like, it's not just your throwing, it's not just receiving, which those are both coming along really well. We're really excited about the receiving numbers are coming back good on the days where it's not ABS, and he's throwing the ball well. He's got a strong arm. We just want to get it out quicker. That's coming along nicely, but it's managing his staff. It's calling the game the right way. Interacting with our pitching coaches. Like, we ask a lot of our catchers, and even in A-ball, we're asking a lot of him. He's embracing it. He speaks English really well, which is, sometimes a challenge. Perfect English and understands the reports. So I'm excited about him. I mean, I think that he's got a lot to prove. Each level is going to tell us whether or not he can stay behind the plate, but everything that I'm seeing in terms of the things that we value at the major league level, receiving, blocking, throwing, game calling, like he's passing all the marks that we need him to right now.
Another catcher we need to ask you about is Dylan Dingler in AAA Toledo. Obviously extremely athletic. Where is he at right now? Obviously he is that third catcher on the 40-man roster. How does he put himself in the conversation of a big league debut?
Yeah, Ding, I think, look, like the defense, like he receives, he blocks, like the throwing is incredible. I think they were like 75% throwing people out when Dingler's catching. And the pitchers have a big part to do with that. Like we've really stressed in spring training, controlling the running game. But Ding's throws have been strong and accurate. The offensive profile, and I think with Ding, what I like is like I think he's starting to understand what kind of hitter he is. He's going to walk and he's going to hit for power and he's going to defend. That is a very valuable player in 2024 behind the plate. And Ding's, you can see it, like he's starting to be confident, gain some confidence. He's starting, even when a guy like Matt Manning or Devin Sweet or Andrew Vasquez or Wingenter's pitching, like he's control, even the older guys now, like he's calling a really good game. And in the conversation he's having with our older pitchers, that he's growing up right in front of our eyes. It's just out hitting, making sure like there's enough contact between the walks and the power comes without reaching for it too much. But I think when you look around the game of baseball at where the catching position is, it's nice to have a guy like Ding waiting in the wings.
For sure. And then three other players, Jace Young, Justin Henry Malloy, Justice Bigbie, grouping all those three together. I know it's not only you that's making the decisions, right? It's a collective decision that you guys are making on all these players as to when they're ready. But what are you looking for out of each of those players, Jace Young, Malloy, Bigbie, and how they make that next step and get to the big leagues?
Yeah, Jace, the position change part or just having some versatility where you can play third and second, like it's going really well. He's playing a lot of third base, and the one thing he needed to do was just play third base, right? We can hit him a million ground balls, and as much as we try to simulate game speed and work before the game, it's nothing like just playing the game. And I think the plays where like he's learning the most on are like the ball off the end of the bat that's got some spin to it, or like the high chopper where he needs to come get it. He can't, the clock is a little bit different at third than it is at second, and that's exactly what AAA is for, and he's learning every night, every inning we can get there. Over at third, I think he learns something and he gets better. The second base defense remains really good, and look, like AAA, AA, AAA is a big jump. Then AAA, the big leagues, is a massive jump. And so Jace, I think he's learning too. Like especially in April, most of the pitchers in AAA have major league time, and he's learning that. Pitchers can land their off speed whenever they want. They don't have to throw you a fastball at all. Fastball usage is way down at AAA, just like it is in the big leagues. And Jace hammers fastball, so he's learning to pick his spots and to not miss fastballs, and then also he's doing a little bit better job on hunting some off speed and having a little bit more kind of major league, like the second part approach of like, hey, maybe I might need to sit off speed here, and we're starting to see him do some of that. But the power has been pretty incredible, especially in April when the ball doesn't really carry that well in Toledo. So. He's off to a nice start with work on and continue to get better. Justin Henry Malloy, it's all outfield now. I think that's really helped him. He's doing a pretty good job out in both corners. The arm plays much better out there than I think we thought at first. So, he just continue to get innings, continue to play both corners, work every day there. Offensively, I think, I hate to use it as an excuse, but April's hard. I mean, there was so much rain, the weather. I think we all got off. We had a lot of guys get off to a slow start in Toledo just because we don't even have BP on the field most nights. But, we're starting to see Justin get right back to where he left off at the end of last year. I think that, offensively, the only thing left for him to do is pick up the phone and go to Detroit and see if he can contribute offensively there as much. And that's, look, like you said, all we can do is get him ready. I think Justin, has proven to all of us that when the at-bats are there. I think regular at-bats are still important for him that I think he can contribute. And then Bigbie flew through the minor leagues last year. I think defensively still, working every day. He moved from first base to corner outfield. He is the one guy I will say the top line numbers didn't start off great in April. All of his underlying numbers, we have already talked about a little bit, process and outcomes. Like his underlying numbers are really good. You're starting to see his top line numbers get better. He was just pretty unlucky that the first 3 weeks. Bigbie's got, it went so fast. I think now he's starting to realize like, you go from like the like fun story of like shooting through the system out of nowhere to an established, AAA / major league option. And he's got to start believing that, and consistency of the performance and consistency of the AB need to equal enough for us to really be like, okay, like we think we can get this out of him out of the next level.
Ryan, before we get out of here, and you've been so generous to talk about so many different things, you've touched on this, and I wanted to ask you about it. The chasm between AAA and the major leagues, to me, has never been wider. And it's highlighted to me in a way. Look, there's some really good rookies in Major League Baseball this year. Almost to a man, they're struggling. Forget Holiday for a second, but as an example, Colt Keith was about as polished and great a hitting prospect in the minor leagues as you could possibly get. His at-bats are still pretty good in the major leagues, but man, hitting is hard. And there's a huge difference between AAA and the major leagues. And as somebody that did it yourself and who watches it every day, give a short explanation and enlighten some people that listen to this pod about how hard and how much different the skill level is between the two levels.
Yeah, you said it best. I was in a meeting. Gosh, I think it might have been in Anaheim a few years ago. We were talking about that gap, and a really experienced scout who's a really good scout's been doing it for a long time. He said just what you said. The gap has always been big, and now it is a million miles apart. And I think it's two things. Like I've honestly spent some time on this. I think shrinking down to 4 affiliates and losing the short season affiliates, it is forcing teams like us included, even we don't want to, like we are moving players faster than we had in the past. We lost the New York Penn League, and that ability to give players, to throttle players a little bit and give them more at-bats and more innings to get to the higher level. So I think players are racing to AA like really fast, like more fast than they ever have. So then you sort of stop at AA, and as a young player, then you kind of have to prove that you can do it. But then eventually a lot of those younger players are getting into AAA and still with a ton of development left. I think, I hate to say this, back when I played, but when I played, I do think, I got to a AAA team with 20 veterans that probably had service time and 5 young kids. It was like Grady Sizemore and Brandon Phillips and Johnny Peralta. But then the guys on our team were Ernie Young and Dusty Wathan, guys that had major league service time that were, 4A type of players. That was the majority of the team and the pitching staff. Now it's probably flipped where you have 5 or 6 4A depth type players and 19 kids that it's their first time in AAA. I don't have like a comment. Like that's just where the game has gone. I think that's every team like that sort of that mid class like upper level player. Those guys either stick in the big leagues or they're, we're going with young players. I think that's a really big part of it. I think the other part of it is just the pitching is so good. We're all so good at developing pitching. The one thing Colt said, I saw Colt the other day. He's like, "There's no easy at bats anymore," and they're in the big leagues. Like there is not one at bat you're going to get up a pitcher that doesn't have either like crazy, even the bad, quote unquote, bad relievers, especially in the big leagues, are probably throwing 95 with like mega ride or mega sink. And we can create, we can create a lot of really interesting shapes, and guys do throw really hard. And you can go to the Atlantic League right now and find some guys that have probably are throwing really, really hard and bring them in, and major league arms. They're just pitching's we all know, the pitching's just beating up the hitters now, and there's no way to simulate it in AAA. Like we've tried a million. We talk about this a lot. Like how can we simulate? But how do you simulate, Crochet's release and fastball and that stuff and that slider? Like it's hard to do. And then I remember when Kerry Carpenter got called up, and we were in Chicago, and I just happened to be on the trip, and it was Kopech, Cease, and somebody else throwing 100. And it's like it's like you can never see that in AAA. And that was Kerry's weekend. It's like, hey, there's your 3 starts, like against 3 elite, pitchers. You're not going to see a fastball below 95 with incredible off speed. And then the bullpen's just as nasty. It's hard. The only way to do it is go do it. And I think Cole hit too. I think the underlying stuff's been great. Like you said, the underlying metrics are good. I like his swing, but he's whether it's Holiday or Colt or any of these young players, until you see it, the pitching jump is bigger than it's ever been.
That's really good stuff. Thank you for explaining that, because that's something that jumps out to us all the time, is there is this huge difference. And we talk about pitching being pitching is the part that you're obviously able to tweak with and tinker and find shapes, and then hitting is the reactionary part of the sport. It's almost kind of like these guys are left out there to die sometimes, but that's kind of how the game goes, right? Well, that's all the time we have for Ryan, but look, man, we really appreciated your time. Hopefully we can get you back on the podcast at some point in the future to check in about all these players that the Tigers are developing in the minor leagues this season. It's been great. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to have you back.
Ryan, I had a blast. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. Let's do. We can just get maybe late in the year and see where all these kids are at. And thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. We're already looking forward to it. So we'll get you back on again sometime soon.
Good to meet you, Mark.
You too, man.
See you, Evan. I'll see you out there.
Everyone, that was Ryan Garko, the Tigers' Vice President of Player Development. There's more to discuss this week, including an interview with Max Clark. But first, let's take a break.
All right, we're back. That was quite a great 45 minutes with Ryan Garko. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, first off, Ryan Garko, I know you're listening, or I'm assuming you're listening. Thank you so much for the time, man. I mean, we were only planning to do like 30 minutes, and it's just, we're a treasure trove of knowledge and content and information. And I learned a ton. To all the listeners out there, I hope you guys learned a ton. I'm sure you did. He was fantastic, man. I can't wait to get him back on again at some point later in the year.
A lot of interesting things to say. I hope people understand what a full menu of things goes into making a Major League Baseball player and creating a great player development org, from making it a destination from a lifestyle standpoint to understanding every single thing that goes on with your swing or your pitch shape or your motion or how to deter injuries. We covered pretty much everything besides the performance level of a bunch of pretty much every good prospect the Tigers had. Maybe we didn't include Jaden Ham, which we'll talk about on another pod, but that was pretty great. We got another interview coming up that, as Ev said earlier, Max Clark interviewed him when he was in Tampa a little earlier this year. Had a lot of great things to say, and if you just listen to Ryan Garko, he also had some comments about Max Clark. So we're going to go right to Max. We'll be back in a few.
Hey there, listener. This is audio producer Robin here with a quick editing note. We're going to be joining Evan's interview with Max Clark already in progress. And for a little bit of context, we'll start the segment with Evan asking Max about his first hit of the season.
Had the first 3 games without a hit, and everyone's like waiting, is he going to get a hit? Is he ever going to get a hit? And then obviously you've settled in real nicely.
For sure. I mean, that's just part of the game. When I was playing in Dunedin, I hit 5 or 6 balls over 100 miles an hour right at people.
Okay.
And that's part of the game. I had definitely like some ups and downs, and I would say that some stuff crept into my mindset early because I had such a rough year last year. But it's like I had a talk with our mental sports science, Aaron Lewis.
Okay.
And we just sat down at dinner one day, and it was like, it's the same game I've played for 18 years. You know what I mean? So I haven't figured anything out. Like, it's still baseball. I'm still growing every single day. And, even big leaguers don't have it all figured out. So, I'm just trusting my process, trying to figure out what I need to do to get out of here, what I need to do to be the best I can be here, what I need to do to be the best for the Tigers, and just trying to grow each and every day as a ball player.
How big was that conversation with Aaron Lewis, like you said, and how much is that something you're going to maybe try to carry with you long term?
It was huge. Aaron's great. Like, he's been with us since last spring training, so he's still kind of new. And, he came right in and hit the ground running. Like, he's extremely nice to everybody. He's always open to talk. Like, he's a text away. He's just super conversational too. Like, it doesn't feel like you're talking to, someone who is a, master's degree in sports science. Like, it sounds like a friend who wants to help, but his knowledge is so extended to where it's just any problem you have, you can go to him.
That's awesome.
And that's a super, that's a big plus to have. Like, a lot of, pro sports, college athletes, they struggle with like mental health. It's a real thing. And so having him by my side is huge because it's just another step that we can use to get to the next step. So, each and every day, if I'm struggling, having a bad day, he's a text away, and I'm able to converse with whatever I need to talk to him about, and just continue my process.
That's special, man, that you're able to advocate, for that.
For sure.
Because, a lot of people don't like to talk about it very much. But
No, this game is, I know it's cliche, but this game is about 90% mental. It wears on you. And especially going into my first full season, there's a lot of stuff between my body, between my mind that have to stay right. Mm-hmm. And so just having someone that can level you out and, an hour conversation is huge. Because there's going to be more struggles. Dunedin was bad, but it was only 11 at-bats. It was 0 for 11, and I had good swings in those 11 at-bats where the results just weren't there. So it's what happens when you're 1 for 46 or 1 for 30 and you have 15, 16 Ks? That's when things really start to worry. Or that's when I would really start to worry in my mindset. Because for me, I'm a process or just as important as results type of guy, especially early on in my development. That my processes in Dunedin were good, and I was happy with what I was doing. There were a couple of bats that got away from me, but at the end of the day, I was happy with the pitches I was swinging at, how hard I was hitting them, and so on. So having the ability to recognize that and get out of it, as well as have somebody close to you that can help you get out of it, is huge.
How do you feel about the early results now, that you've gotten out of that? It seems like and I haven't watched a lot, again, from what I've seen off box scores and stuff like that, it seems like a lot of singles, you kind of taken what they're giving you at this point and trying to do what you can in that way?
For sure. I think the biggest thing for me, I've been looking at some numbers, and it's I'm really just playing my game. This is what I've always done. I'm a hit first guy. The power's going to come. I'm 19. I have 3 years to develop and gain strength, gain size, whatever it may be. But it's on the flip side of that, when you really break it down, I haven't gotten a lot of pitches in the heart. The way I'm being pitched right now, my overall zone percentage is only 45%.
Interesting.
So, and with that, I'm not getting a lot of pitches in the heart of the zone. And so it's having the maturity to be I'm not going to look for the pitch to hit a home run here. I'm going to take what the game gives me and take my singles, take my hits. It's big, especially for me because I'm a speed threat. I've been trying to do whatever I can to get on base. I've been drawing my walks. I've been taking what the game gives me and trying to steal bases. And that's something that, this organization preaches. Control the strike zone, take your walks, be a good runner, be an athlete. Just take what the game gives you.
And the one that you got that was middle in the heart, you hit a long way.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I feel in my idea, that's a result based off of our processes for the last 3 weeks. I've gotten a lot of good swings off. Max Gordon, one of our roaming hitting coordinators, was just down here, and we were talking a ton about getting the barrel head out, getting into my backside, and kind of leaning back on balls. And that was a prime example of trusting a process and trusting your plan and getting the result as well. There are a lot of times, more often than not in this game, where you're going to take your process and your plan to the plate and it's going to fail miserably. There are multiple times where we've sat down before the game, we've looked at the pitcher's scouting report and be okay, we're going to hone in on this pitch and this pitch, get rid of that pitch, and look for these in this part of the zone. Mm-hmm. And then he's just completely opposite. Funny enough, in Palm Beach, one of our hitting cards was this guy's 88-92 with a sweeper.
Okay.
He ended up coming out of the pen 95-98 with a just banger slider, really good changeup. So there's a time where your plan fails, and you just have to be a good enough hitter, good enough athlete, and be strong enough mentally to get off of that plan and just compete. For sure. And that's kind of what I've bought into is I'm not selling out for power because I'm not I'm 19. I'm just here to do my part, play my game, and let the power come.
How much have you learned about that? Hey, I'm only 19. I can't. And also these are big ballparks too. Let's not forget that. But how much have you learned that? Yeah, my power is going to come. And I don't need to be a 20 homer guy right now.
100%. It was huge for me because last year, I was trying to buy into the whole power hitter guy, especially coming out of high school. That was when it got really bad. I didn't have a great junior summer, so coming into the spring, they were you got to hit for more juice, keep the run till the same, just a bunch of scout smoke screen.
Yeah.
And I changed my swing a little bit, and then it got me into some troubles in pro ball, so I had to rework that again and kind of relearn how to be a hitter first. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've done. I just stayed true to that process, trusted the fact that I was drafted because I'm a good hitter. I control the zone, and I just kind of let it come. Because if you look at the numbers, exit velars are way up compared to last year. Launch angles getting there. I still hit a lot of balls in the ground, but I also have that in my game, so it's okay. And it's in reality, 3 years is when I need to be hitting for juice, not year one in the Florida State League.
Yeah, don't burn them. Don't use them all now.
Yeah. And it'd be great if I grow into some early, start hitting some more balls out of the park. But it's like the way the game trends, the way my swing trends, the way the exos are trending is that it is coming, it's developing.
Yeah.
And it's just going to take more work, more time in the gym, a little bit more of a swing, like whatever it may be. We figure that out as we go.
That's what I was going to ask. Are you doing anything like consciously to get the ball in the air more? Or to your point, like, is that maybe not as much of a priority as it might have been maybe like a year ago for you?
It's still a priority because there are times where like I get super ground ball heavy. But usually it's not based off of a pitch or anything that gets me to hit the ball on the ground. Like typically it's because my hips aren't working the way they need to be in that swing, or I'm getting out of a swing early. It's actually more on the mechanical side because it's when we broke down the swing of the home run, actually, we looked at it and it was like if I can learn to repeat that swing way more often, not so much to hit a home run every time, but the way my body was positioned in that swing is so much more elite than some of the swings that I've had, over the rest of the year. Like that's kind of like the glimpse into what I want to be, and the ability to make that way more consistent, to do that at the highest level is where I want to go, if that makes sense.
It's really good. No, that makes a lot of sense.
All right, Ev, that was an outstanding interview. Shared a lot of perspective about the process he's going through in Lakeland. Really first full year of being a Major League Baseball player, or at least a minor league baseball player. So what were your thoughts on what he shared with you?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, this is a guy who, yes, we want to see Max Clark hitting 20 home runs, maybe even more than that. We want to see him stealing 30 plus bags. We want to see him hitting 300. Like, of course, like everybody wants to see that. Fans want to see that. I would love to see that. Max Clark would love to do it. But I think it's really impressive that he's gotten to a point now where he understands that he does have a process, and it isn't always going to be linear. Like your development process is not linear. There are going to be ups and downs. As we record this right now on, Sunday night, Max Clark is hitting 244 right now. Okay. Like that's not great, but also at the same time, it doesn't mean that Max Clark is going to be hitting 244 in 3-4 years when he's in the big leagues. So I think he's understood that part of it, and that there will be ups and downs, whether it's ups and downs as in 3 really bad games where you're not getting any hits. Also, maybe some ups and downs where 3 really bad games where you're not getting any hits, but actually maybe they're not bad games. They're good games because you have a good process. You just didn't end up getting hits. The exit velos were good, all that kind of stuff. You're drawing walks. Like, I think the fact that he's understood that a little bit more is better because, man, pro baseball is really, really difficult. There's a reason that there are only a handful of guys out there who can play it, and a smaller handful who actually can get up to the big leagues. So I like the fact that he's understood his process. He seems like he's in a pretty good headspace, and we'll see how he attacks the rest of the way. What do you think about him, Mark?
I think he's got less than 100 at-bats this year. I think by the time I'm going to really start paying attention to how good he is, he'll have 300 to 500 at-bats, and just expect before we really know a little bit about what he might be, he's going to have 700 to 1,000 at-bats. So it's going to be a long process with him. I'd like to bring up Wyatt Langford, who now has a 321 slugging percentage. That's slugging percentage in Texas right now after about 100 at-bats.
Also just landed on the 10-day injured list.
And yes, he did hit 7 dongs during spring training. He has 1 now. So, yeah, the big leagues are pretty tough for anybody that's seemingly in 2024 that is a rookie. Rookies are just getting torched unless your name is Wenceel Perez. But, yeah, baseball's hard, man. Very, very hard. Kevin McGonigal, the number 1A draft choice of 2023. I think, as Mr. Ryan Garko said, very hitterish, and he's been very hitterish since he came off the DL here last week. It's fun to watch him. Got any thoughts on that?
Is it bad that I'm more excited about Kevin McGonigal than I am about Max Clark? Is that a bad thing? Am I allowed to be more excited about Kevin McGonigal than Max Clark, or is it too soon? I think it's too soon, but I'm pretty excited about Kevin McGonigal.
How about Josu Braceno?
I mean, yeah, that guy hits too. Like, that guy hits too. And you look at the body, man, like, that's a big league player right there. That's a big league player. Standing at 6'5", 6'6". Like, that's a dude who looks good in the uniform right there. And he hits. And so, yeah, like, is it, I'm sorry that, like, Jose Braceno and Kevin McGonigal get me a little bit more excited than Max Clark right now. Sorry if that upsets anybody. Sorry if that upsets Max Clark, but that's just where I'm at. Like, both those guys have been fun. And Kevin McGonigal, though, like, he hits. So if you're going to hit like the way that Kevin McGonigal hits, and you're going to put up professional, major league caliber type plate appearances like Kevin McGonigal does, you're going to move quickly in this farm system. I think we could see Kevin McGonigal make the jump to West Michigan faster than we see Max Clark make that jump.
Yeah, I think he's a little more advanced in bat-to-ball skills, and he has a little more consistent swing. I think Max's swing is a work in progress. So the consistency level needs to pick up. I've been pretty vocal about this, but he's so athletic and he's so dedicated. I think over time, he'll be able to make the necessary tweaks to make more consistent, good contact. I'm not even going to discuss hard contact for a 19-year-old yet. So, we'll monitor it. We'll discuss it. I think once a month, we're going to talk about minor leaguers for half the show because I think people like it. And we need to update everybody at how the system is doing. As far as Braceno, we tease that Zach McKinstry is Jordan McKinstry, but let's be really blunt about it. Braceno, there's a lot of Jordan Alvarez in Jose Braceno, to say the least. Excited to pay attention to that. He's been raking pretty well. All right. We need to get out of here. Remember to please like, rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to Tiger Podcast, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Don't really care where, but please listen to us and rate us. You can always find us embedded in every Evan Petzold article at freep.com. We're there all the time. I'd like to thank our executive producers, Kirk Crawford, and Free Press editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, and our producer, the man, the legend, the myth, who makes us look good every week, Robin Chan.
The GOAT.
The GOAT. Love my grandson, the spectacular Braden Michael Gorash. Shout out to Evan Petzold's workout partner and wife, who is doing a good job of taking care of him. I hope he's doing a good job of taking care of her, Savannah Petzold. Till next week, everybody, peace.